Travelling northwest of Zangongo, we find Kahama. The 3rd Brigade of Fapla was based at Kahama. Kahama was a well-fortified Fapla base which consisted of a large network of underground bunkers and trenches. Despite the numerous airstrikes which it had made on Kahama, it was never the intention of the SADF to capture Kahama prior to Operation Askari. As part of the plan for Operation Askari, it was aimed at neutralizing the enemy at Kahama to prevent it from sending reinforcements to its forces on the Eastern Front, in this instance mainly owing to the presence of enemy SA-8 missile systems. This decision was taken earlier to isolate Kahama completely or preferably to take it. The assault was carried out by 61 Mechanized Battalion with the support of artillery. One of the principal aims of attack was to capture the SA-8 missile batteries, which was located southeast of Kahama. The missile system was a much sought after prize as they had never been captured by a Western force. Operation Fox was a sub-operation within Operation Askari. It entailed the coordinating of an aerial and ground bombardment in a pattern which would force the SA-8 battery to leave the positions and move south. A complete SA-8 missile battery system was not captured at Kahama, but it was captured much later, 5 years later, by the SADF in the war during Operation Modular in October 1987 in the Mavinga area. During Operation Askari, at H-hour on 24 December 1983, a combat group, which is part of Task Force X-Ray under command of Commandant Ep van Dil, wheeled left, moved 3 kilometers south of Kahama. Fapla T-54-55 tanks who were reported to be on the move in the area. Sierra Battery commenced firing, but an order came through to break contact. The 2 combat groups then hurriedly withdrew in the face of waves of rockets from Fapla's BM-21 122mm rocket launches. At 1600 hours on 31 December 1983, the combat group was attacked by 5 or 6 T-54-55 tanks, which were supported by infantry. 2 of the tanks were immediately hit by fire from Task Force X-Ray. 3 South African Defence Force soldiers and a great number of Fapla infantry soldiers were killed in the fierce engagement. At the conclusion of this stage, the first stage of Operation Askari, Combat Group 1 evacuated the area and regrouped at Zangongo to its southeast for its next mission at Kuvalai. The task force left when its position southeast of Diva were discovered by Fapla and its presence in the area was made known.
Yeah.
Next, we get to an important operation which was conducted in Chifufua, not one of the places which we were able to reach from the main roads which we travelled in the Kunene province of Angola. Now, this is situated north of Vanjiva, and the place was codenamed Smoke Shell. Operation Septic, as it was called, was planned to commence on 10 June 1980. The target area extended over more than 45 square kilometers in the vicinity of Chifufua. The SWAPO base was also known to the SADF as QFL and given the nickname of Smoke Shell. It was located 180 kilometers north of Beacon 25 on the Cat Line and housed the forward command headquarters of SWAPO at that stage. QFL had 13 subcomplexes which housed anywhere from 15 to 150 men each, while its larger complexes held as many as 400 men at the operational and general headquarters. It was defended by at least 7 dual-purpose anti-aircraft installations. There were from 700 to 800 men at QFL, and a further 700 men who were at the base at Ihonde, which also had a strategic airstrip. Now, Brigadier Rudolf Witkop Barnors was an officer in command of Sector 10 and had overall command of operation at Enhana in Namibia. Combat Group 6-1 comprised of 1,300 men of all ranks and consisted of headquarters, 2 mechanized infantry companies, 2 armored car squadrons, 2 attached parachute companies, 2 troops of medium artillery with 140mm guns, and an 81mm mortar platoon, an assault pioneer platoon, 2 anti-tank platoons in Ratel 90s, a field engineer, a light workshop troop, medical signals corps personnel. Now, the components of 6-1 Mechanized Infantry Battalion form 6 combat teams under the command of Colonel Johan Dippies Dippenaar. Combat Team 1 comprised of anti-tank platoons and 3 mechanized platoons from Alpha Company of 6-1 Mechanized Battalion, while Combat Team 2 comprised of 3 mechanized platoons and the 81mm mortar platoon on call. Combat Team 3 was made up of 3 armored car troops and 4 sections of mechanized support infantry from Delta Squadron of 6-1 Mechanized Infantry Battalion and the engineering section. Combat Team 4 and 5 comprised Bravo and Foxtrot companies of 1 parachute battalion, whose soldiers were divided into 3 28-man stopper groups under command of Captain McGill Alexander and Lieutenant Johan Pitter. The soldiers of Combat Team 4 were mounted on buffels and their 81mm mortar groups were mounted on rattles. The Combat Team 5 contingent was to be airlifted to its position shortly before the commencement of attack. Neither Combat Team 4 or Combat Team 5 was deployed in the attack, owing to after fuel not being made available to the Alouette crews, which was a mistake. Consequently, no Pumas could be supplied by the South African Air Force. Combat Team 6 consisted of an engineering troop on buffels, a mine-protected vehicle, and the Assault Pioneer Platoon of 6-1 Mechanized Infantry Battalion. The artillery group comprised of 8 140mm guns, the mortar platoon of 6-1 Mechanized Infantry Battalion, and an infantry platoon for protection. The plan for the attack entailed Combat Teams 1, 2 and 3 following an ill-defended road which fell, and then turn left of 76 SWAPO soldiers had been counted. Most of the 12 soldiers of the task force who were killed in the attack died as a consequence of direct hits to the rattles in which they had been travelling by the anti-aircraft guns which were used by SWAPO forces on ground defence roles. This meant that the rattle, with its relatively thin armour, was suitable to defend small arms fire and shrapnel from mortar attacks, but anti-aircraft guns used in the ground role posed a huge threat for these vehicles and for future operations.
Look, talking about smoke shell, it was rather a challenge because it was the very first time that a mechanized force was composed, and the area that we were going to operate, there was no maps about it. So everything was back to basics of compasses to use, and also to use the maps that was available, which doesn't give you much of it. But the big challenge was that the enemy, because the information was that there was more than 800 enemy in the area of about 3 kilometers by 7 kilometers. But what was the great achievement for me was the leadership. The leadership of the combat group at that time was also youngsters, and was the first time that they were exposed to this kind of war. Also with the combined arms, because there was armor, infantry, engineers, and artillery, which made it much more difficult for them to do. But they all succeed with excellent performance, and the outcome of the battle is proof thereof.
I'm broadcasting in the area which is west of the Kunene River, south of Kahama, where at the end of Angolan border war, huge fighting took place at a place close to me called Tsetsepa. By January 1988, 3,500 Cuban soldiers were being deployed in southwestern Angola, totally on the other side where the previous big fighting took place in southeastern Angola, thereby posing a threat to the SADF on a completely new front in the west. The initial SADF Task Force Zulu was to be commanded by Colonel Miguel Delport, formerly the OC of 3rd Battalion. A force from 6th Mechanized Battalion was mobilized to defend the Kouleik Dam at all costs. 155 G5 Halzeter military groups crossed the bridge of Kouleik on 16 June 1988.
I was appointed beginning of 1988 as the commander of 3rd Battalion, and operations was done in the eastern side of Angola. Then the focus point moved more to the west, to the north of Sector 10, where Brigadier Sertfontein was in charge. We had to be ready to prevent the Cubans, which were at that stage, one of the advanced elements was deployed in the Chipa area to move towards Ruacana, and if there were any threat to Namibia, to prevent it. I deployed my forces north of the Kunene River, in 3rd Battalion on the high ground, north of Ruacana. We drew up a plan and decided on the 26th of June 1988 to attack them with artillery, to do a big bombardment. And it was one of the biggest bombardments of the war. There was G5 artillery, G2, multiple rocket launchers, 120mm mortars involved, and we attacked them on the Sunday night of the 26th of June. Very successful. We neutralized their command and control, the artillery, and such a matter that only the following day they could react and counter our attack, and they start looking for us. And that whole day we were busy with contacts with them. 6th Mech was involved with the Rifle 19s. Unfortunately, the tanks couldn't depart. They were too far back for this fight. The Cubans, not very happy for what happened the previous night, sent 6 MiGs with 450 kilogram bombs to bombard our forces in the Kouleik area. They threw us with 6 bombs, one at the bridge, one at the dam, one falling next to a Buffalo and one next to a armored car, and one damaging the pipeline. They withdraw then to the north. They had some top covers also with them, and that was the main incident. Then that day also, after the attack, I was informed by Sector 10 Brigadier Serfontein that we have to break contact with the enemy. We are jeopardizing the peace process that was at that stage in process. I had to withdraw most of my forces south of the Kalorek scheme in the Rokana area, except for the 3 elements which were in defensive positions north of Rokana. We left them there. We had all our forces back that night.
A Ratel 90 was hit by a T-54-55 tank, which resulted in the death of Lieutenant Millie Meyring and the wounding 3 other soldiers. The wreckage is still inside Angola and could be visited. It's not far from where I now currently find myself, but more to the south. 20mm gun hit one of a returning MiGs, which on its way back had a crash landing.
And that was the last conventional stroke big fight against the Cubans and the enemy in the Bush War. After that, there was some incidents where SWAPO was involved, but no conventional type of operations after that. That was actually, we could say, the end of the war.
This spelled the end of the war. As soon afterwards, a peace accord was signed. The parties reached agreement. Cuban forces left for Cuba, and the South Africans withdrew from the territory of Southwest Africa, Namibia, for the election to follow a UNTAC force to keep the peace, and the subsequent independence of Namibia after. So today we're heading to the end of this adventure and this story about the Angolan Border War. We're just north of the Kalorek Dam, where 1973-74 it properly all started. It started with the protection of the dam, the waterworks that takes water, very crucial water, to Ovambo land. And that's where we engaged a force of UNITA first. And then at the end of the war, at Tsepa, also in the same area, that's where the Cubans came down and the war was ended by an accord.
Right after the attack on Tsepa by us, we started with this peace process. The Joint Monitoring Commission was established with Colonel Archie Moore, the chairman from our side, and they had frequent meetings at Kalorek with the Cuban forces, and it was almost a festive atmosphere when they gathered there together. There was exchanges of cigars and rat packs and the fish and things like that, and they monitored all the incidents which happened after that until such stage that the war actually ended.
So this story consists of approximately 20 episodes. Tells you a great deal of what this war is about. And I hope you enjoyed the adventure and sharing everything I learned.
I will wait in the morning if you call, and I'll stand beside you as long as I can. I will hold back the evening of your sun, but I won't crumble with you if you fall.
carrying out the operation Askari in 1983.